Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of She Talks Business. We have a repeat guest today, one of my favorite people, someone that I could talk to for hours on this show. Jennifer McClanahan is back to join us for another rich conversation. In case you don't remember who Jennifer is, I am going to remind you. She is the founder and CEO of Leverage to Lead. She created Leverage to Lead to help women and people of color build a career strategy that is rooted in clarity, value, and authenticity. That work led to the creation of a team of exceptional coaches, educators, recruiters, HR specialists, and fierce advocates. They help organizations build DEI statements, values, and commitments. They design and facilitate group training, programs, and workshops to help people live those values and commitments. And they coach clients through career transitions, whether to new positions, new firms, or into their new role as CEO. You do a lot of important work to help not only individuals and people, but to help organizations grow, Jennifer.
Yes. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for that introduction. My work started 12 years ago coaching women. And I was spending all this time coaching women, and then they were going into organizations that weren't really designed to help and support them. So I felt like I was doing work that was putting all the responsibility on women and people of color to adapt and manage an environment without actually addressing the environment. So, when we expanded and we grew, one of the intentional part of our work is to really work with organizations so that they can build cultures in which all people can show up and feel respected and engaged.
Yeah, it's so important. I had a conversation with someone today who reached out to me because they're interested in doing some work with me. And this individual was talking to me a little bit about a toxic work environment and how one of their past supervisors would literally use language like sit the F down in their office. And I was shocked. I guess I could say this person that I was talking to was a Caucasian person, but I felt like I was really in a moment of sitting in my privilege because no one has ever talked to me that way. And when I heard this person talk about it, I thought to myself, wow, you are so naive, because I would actually think that doesn't happen in today's workplace, but you would know more so than I do that this type of thing actually does happen. And like, what do you do if you're not an empowered individual and somebody says something like that to you?
I know, because often you are sitting in that moment thinking you don't have a choice and that you have no power. We always have our power and choice. The fact that you stay there is a choice. I'm not saying that lightly, right? Because all choices have consequences. So it's not to say that you could leave your job. And we just wrote an article about this, and really the idea of even when you cannot leave, when you're deciding to stay, instead of feeling like I don't have anything else but to stay, you begin to see all types of situations as opportunities, not just as challenges. So when you know that you're deciding to stay, you can also decide to do something else.
Yes.
It's power of decision.
Yes. And sometimes you have to, I hate to say it, you have to sit down and you have to suck it up in that moment because you have bills to pay and a family to take care of. And for some women, if you're a single mom, you don't have agency of choice in that moment. You need to plan how you're going to change the situation. And sometimes, unfortunately, it requires people to sit in the discomfort of that until they've figured out a different way or a better way of moving forward in their career. So all that to say, you do really important work. Thank you.
Thank you. I love this work. I can't imagine doing anything else. Some mornings when my office is now downstairs, which I love, and I come downstairs, I'm tired and I don't really want to. By my first conversation, I'm like, I'm so happy I'm doing this work.
So, I read your bio, but I'd really like for you to start by just telling us about the work. What is the work like for you? Describe for us some of the work that you and your team do on a regular basis.
Our work is all about helping people live their values, whether individually or as an organization. I think it was last year, or it might have been 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, this article came out about burnout. And it said the biggest cause of burnout is when you betray your own values. So if you have values and you're going, so this person who you were referencing earlier is working in an environment that is not sharing their values. So not only are you frustrated, it leads to burnout because you aren't living what you believe to be true in your environment. And so at the end of the day, we help people actually identify what they value. Often what you value is based on how you were raised, what your identity is, what your experiences are, and then choose to behave in a way that supports values. And with organizations, we ask them to really think about, often they have values. Those values are very aspirational. And we ask them to think about, how would you operationalize these values so that they're in the way people behave, in the way that you set compensation, in the way that you do reviews, and the way that you run meetings. And so we're really helping people become more mindful about the decisions they make in their day-to-day lives, especially at work, because I often hear people talk about like, well, I have work and then the rest of my life, but work is your life. Like, it's just there's no this part of my life and that part of my life. You actually only have one life.
Yes, very, very true. Very true. So I recently shared a story on LinkedIn about a couple in my neighborhood who have an out of control dog that I have gotten a little irritable about on a number of occasions. And I may or may not have swore at them at one point when the dog came running towards me and my dog for the third time. And you shared my post and you wrote, "This is the absolute truth. When you tolerate less than high standards, you open the door to inequity and exclusion." Can you talk about that?
So we believe at Leverage to Lead, there are three things that build an equitable culture. The first one is psychological safety. So you have to be able to know that you're going to have your job, that you're going to be treated fairly, and that you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to get paid. You have the capacity to take a risk. The second thing is the vulnerability that builds trust. So if you want someone to take risk, they have to be able to be vulnerable enough to make a mistake or to do something wrong or to try something again. But the thing that really builds an equitable culture is a high standards with the shared purpose. So if we're all believe in the purpose that we're doing it, and we're doing it at this high standard, everyone knows what we need to do in order to get the job done. And when people are working towards it, doesn't mean that everyone will meet those high standards automatically. You might need to give some people more training to meet the high standards. Some people may have come in and done this job for 10 years and they come in and they're really good at it. So it's not saying that everyone's going to meet the high standard immediately, but high standards becomes the expectation, not whether I know you, not whether I like you, not whether or not I think you're a good person, but objectively, this is what we expect. This is how we run things here. These are our values. We expect everyone to meet the values, and it's the same standard for everyone. Then you can gauge whether or not someone's willing to do the work. Do they have the capacity to do the work? Do they even believe in these values? And that gives them the opportunity to self-select. But when I was reading your example about the dog, the thing that the dog doesn't have a standard. That dog can behave however it wants. And in cultures, we often have, I don't want to call people dogs, but we have people in culture who act like that dog and are attacking other employees, right? So
rogue employees that are not behaving appropriately.
Exactly. So that other example of the woman who said, sit the F down, right? That's not a whole lot different than the dog running out and attacking you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what really resonated with me is, so I've been doing a lot of work with my team this year on leadership and really trying to become better leaders. And one of the things that I'm noticing is that in our quest to become better leaders, I've actually seen people pull back away from having hard conversations. And so I find that interesting because I think that good leaders have high standards and high expectations. And so when I read what you wrote, it just made me realize that, one of the things that I always say is, if you see something, say something. And what's happening in our organization at times is people are seeing something and they're not saying something, and they're rationalizing why they shouldn't say something. And when you wrote that, it made me connect the dots to say, well, that's not equitable, because if one manager says something and another manager doesn't, then we're not actually creating an equitable workplace where the standards are enforced the same for everyone, regardless of, whether you're male, whether you're female, like you're whatever, however you identify, whatever race, religion you are, it should be the same for everybody. It shouldn't be different for anyone. So I thought that was really powerful.
It seems so sensical when you say it, but we work with so many organizations, and it's very hard to take on the discomfort of telling someone the truth, even when it's in their best interest.
I would add to that it's hard to hold on to the discomfort and communicate something in a way that comes across intentionally kind.
Right.
I think that sometimes what happens is when somebody doesn't meet the standard, it can piss you off. And when you're in that emotional state and you're pissed off, you either say it the wrong way because you're letting your emotions drive the bus, or you avoid saying something and you carry that kind of mad attitude around with you all day. And so the challenge is, how do you be able to sit with it and express it in a kind manner when you're saying it? Kind doesn't have to be, you can be clear and you can be kind at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, that's actually where the vulnerability comes in. Because vulnerability, I think, like when we talk about vulnerability, it's not that you're sharing your most innermost private thoughts and secrets with the people at work. It means that I remember that I don't actually always have the answers. Mm-hmm. I can remember when things were challenging for me. In fact, me having this conversation that makes me really uncomfortable is an act of vulnerability, right? Of showing my vulnerability. Right. So you could actually go and tell someone, this is really a hard thing for me to say, and I'm really uncomfortable, but I need to tell you, because if I don't, I'm actually not helping you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really, really great framing. Really great framing. So one of the things that you sign your emails off with and you talk about on a regular basis is embrace your humanity. What does embrace your humanity mean to you?
Can I tell you a little funny story before I explain that?
Sure.
So my daughter wanted to get braids in her hair. She's going to kill me for telling this to everybody in the world.
She's not going to listen to you on a podcast anyway.
That's very true.
You're not that cool. Come on.
Very true. So
unless of course I tell her.
Yeah. So we had a disagreement about the braids. And so finally I was like, fine, but you have to pay for them. I'm not going to pay for them. So I said, and you can pay for them by being an intern at Leverage to Lead. How exciting is that? And so she took on a summer job here, and her summer job was actually going through reading all of our blog posts and articles, editing them, and then putting them up in MailChimp so that, we could automatically put them out, and also uploading them on the website. So she was reading them all, and she's like, Mom, all you talk about is humanity this, humanity that. She's like, do you think everyone gets tired of talking about humanity? Because you're always talking about it. And I was like, Zoe, you got to embrace your humanity. We talk about it because you actually, the only way through all of these difficult moments is to know I'm doing the best I can as the human. I am a human showing up, doing really hard work. And she was like, I said, in fact, Zoe, I'm going to make that my signature on so we played around. It's like, embrace your humanity, be human, love humanity. Like we did all of these. And so finally we both settled on embrace your humanity. And she's like, you're really going to put that on your email signature all the time, like whomever? And I'm like, yes, I am. I said, because I think your reflection on reading our articles really helps me understand how important that is to our work. And I think, Lisa, you and I have talked about, really, I think the hope is in our humanity. Mm-hmm. Yes. The more human we can be and see in others, the better it is. I was reading this article in the Washington Post, and I really disagreed with what the writer said. And so there were a number of people who disagreed. And so I left a comment. about, why I disagreed with it. And I was trying to be kind in the comment because I write and publish things and would want someone to be kind to me, even if they disagreed. And so I think by the end of the day, he had like 85 comments on his article. And so he chimed back in to clarify what he meant and what he was saying. And it was talking about with Black people that sound white or act white, often at a young age, they adopt the whatever. My part of my problem is what does it mean to act white or to be white? That they're doing that because they are separating themselves from their Blackness, right? Because of the challenge they have being Black. And so I was saying my challenge is that might be true for some people, but that's not true for all people. And it's going back in the challenges of a Black kid with talking white and being smart in school. He was kind of like starting that whole dialogue again for this group of people who he doesn't know. Anyway,
huge generalization.
Huge. And so he went back and apologized, but he still didn't get the heart of the point that others were saying. And what I said to him, I replied to his point and I said, what I think you are missing is the power of the words that you write. You think that you're writing something and it's experience and it's interesting, but you're not seeing your own power. And if you have 85 comments on your article, you have a lot of power and you're underestimating that power. And the reason why I said it that way is because he's a human in a moment trying to take in all of this feedback. And can I share what I think to him, but still see his humanity in that?
Mm-hmm.
And so it just is how I try to give feedback all the time. Mm-hmm. And, also talk about my own imperfections because I have a lot of them.
I think we all do. What is one thing people need to know about the work you do? So let me explain what I mean by that. You go into some really big organizations. You work with leadership teams, you work with boards, you work with individuals. What is a pattern or a common thing that you see that if people just knew this, life would be so much easier. Life would be so much better for people.
So the context of our work is that we're often talking about racism, but by and large, we talk about gender and we talk about discrimination against people with differing abilities. But at the end of the day, really, we're talking about race in America. Mm-hmm. And what people want when we talk about race in America is the rules. So, all right, so Black people are supposed to do this, white people should only do this, right? So if you're Black, you don't ask the Black person to do this. So what they're trying to do is be good people who do it right. Mm-hmm. And in doing it right, they're following rules, but the rules mean that you're interacting with someone's identity. What you see about them or what you think about them, you are not actually interacting with their humanity, who is the human in front of you. And if everyone would take the moment to be interested and listen deeply to what people are saying about themselves, you would know how this individual needs to be treated, right? So when we work with organizations and they'll create a program for, let's say, women, not all women need the same thing. So what we created at Leverage to Lead, was it's a blueprint, it's a framework such that when you supervise someone, you have a tool to actually evaluate the strength of the relationship along with the performance. But we rarely in organizations think, well, how is my relationship as a supervisor with my employee, right? And the employee says, oh, I actually have responsibility in this relationship. How am I showing up in relationship to my supervisor, right? And could we have a conversation about that? So I'm getting what I need to do my best work. And people know as a human, this is what I need when I show up to do the work here. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if we could just have organizations stop trying to do it right, and really be interested in the people that work for them, it would change so many things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
that's
name, Lisa, that this doesn't matter whether you have 5 people in your company or 30,000 people in your company. It's all possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love what you said about identity versus humanity. Identity is essentially you're putting people into boxes, and you're making them all the same because of how you are associating identity versus, really understanding where people are coming from and what their life experiences have been.
And think about it, Lisa, what you think about someone's identity is really on your own, how you were raised, your own socialization. Like what you think about someone else's identity has very little to do with that person, and almost all about the stereotypes that you're holding about people who look like that or do that thing. So you can't even, I think people don't even realize that they're only entertaining their own point of view when they're thinking about, based on how someone presents, this is what they need or don't need, or this is what I'm afraid of or not afraid of.
So talk to me a little bit about the coaching and advisory work that you do inside of your organization, and why you feel that coaching and advisement is a powerful complement to all the other work you do. Because you go in and you work with teams, but then you also often will work with a leader from an advisory perspective, or you'll work with an individual from a coaching perspective. Faye, my dog has decided she likes to chew the quarter round, and that is not a good thing. And I know she's very cute, and you're looking at her like she's adorable. And if anybody's watching this video, she is adorable, but don't chew the wood.
Look at the face. Oh, Lisa.
Focus.
She's so cute. I've been listening to the podcast this season, and I was like, I need a dog. I'm the only one who doesn't have a dog.
She's just such a monkey. She's adorable. So, sorry, distraction.
Coaching. No, but you were talking about coaching.
Yeah. I want to know, because you and I've worked together in different capacities for a long time. So I'm curious as to how you see the value of that and why it's important in the work that you do, in addition to the bigger project work that you do.
So way back when, Lisa, when I was like, I'm going to start my business, I had no idea I didn't even know the business I was going to start, but I had a coach. I had a couple coaches, and I liked them, but I was always frustrated because it was like in a group coaching program. And so whenever I had an issue, the advice to the issue was always so general, because the coach didn't actually know me. Right? They didn't know me. And when I met you and started talking to you, you were very interested in my point of view and why was I going to do the work that I do and the way that I want to do my work. And that was such a lesson for me in my own coaching, because then I realized that in order to help an individual, we have to you have to actually understand, what does that person believe? What do they know? Why is this important to them? What are their strengths? And how did those strengths come to be? Not just like, oh, you're really good at numbers, but like, how is it that you're good at, why does that matter to you? Because then when you coach and you're interacting with someone, you're not asking them to take on or be someone else. You're asking them to be themselves as they take on challenging, right, situations, as they decide to expand and grow. Like, how do you become more of yourself? And how do you get to decide the areas in which you want to grow that are more fulfilling, instead of thinking, oh, I always need to just get better at the things I'm not good at. Like, some of the things you're not good at, you just maybe shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Right. But it was hard, especially when I was working with women in law, because it was my first start. Because in law, it's such an older white male dominated field as a partner. So whenever someone has a legal issue, they want the old white guy that's going to give them the sage advice, right?
Right.
So I'm working with young women of color. You have to be able to tell people why you, and it has to be, and it is different than because you've been working in law for all these years, right? It might be the fact that you're so scrappy. It might be the fact that you have built such great relationships. It might be that you love this particular area of law. So I have a client, and she grew up not in America. I don't want to tell her story too. I don't want to reveal who she is, but one of the things that was challenging to her is that like her family had some wealth and money, but not a lot. When she came to the United States and was getting her education, she wanted to understand, like, what is this flow of money and how do businesses make money and what are they doing to invest? She was very interested based on her life, how she grew up. She took that interest and became a corporate attorney. And she's a corporate attorney now. She's a partner at a law firm with a team. But the reason why organizations want to work with her and take her legal advice is because she's always telling them about investing their money, and because she does a lot of private equity, so helping venture capital and private equity companies. But she actually understands not just legally what they need to do, but from how when you're raising money, what are some of the implications? What are the things that you need? But she's doing it because she's interested, and that's always mattered to her, not necessarily as a tactic to get more clients.
Right.
So if it had been the standard and she never told people that's what she did, they wouldn't assume that she has that kind of advice. She's under 40 and has been named like multiple times as one of the top 40 under 40 lawyers, right, in the United States. But that's because she is very interested in her work. She likes to work hard. She likes to keep things simple for her clients. She can't take things that are complicated because the way people view her is often so complicated based on her identity. So she managed all of the obstacles that she encountered and used all the way that she managed those obstacles in a way that has actually made her career expand. But she had to appreciate all those things about herself that weren't necessarily recognized at the law firm. Like the law firms didn't necessarily really appreciate what she had to offer until she told them what she had to offer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. So in your work, when you're coaching and advising people, so when you're working with some of the big companies that you work with and you're, an advisor to a senior leader, why do you think it's important that they have an outside advisor, especially if they're doing DEI work or values work inside of their organization?
First of all,
my monkey is like misbehaving.
Look at Faith is so cute. One of the things, Lisa, is that leaders are socialized to believe certain things about leadership. So they should have the answers. They know what's going on. Some are insecure about their leadership, so they're like over managing people and doing things. Very few leaders have really done cultural competency work to understand what does it mean to build an equitable and inclusive environment. And so a lot of leaders, especially now, because when you make a mistake as a leader in a big organization, it can be so public and so embarrassing.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're frozen a little bit in what to do. Like, how can I tell someone I don't actually know the answer and that be okay? Because it's not often they're in organizations where it's not. So coaching leaders, I enjoy the work, but I find that I am a relief to them. I'm someone where they can say, oh, I don't actually know how this works. Well, can I ask this dumb question, right? Oh my gosh, I'm not supposed to ask Black people this question. So they'll ask me that question. And they're like, I really appreciate that you were there for me to ask that question because now I understand things better. This goes back to what you were saying about what organizations could do differently. So I help the leaders kind of break the rules a little bit about what does it mean to be a leader, especially when you're trying to take into account equity and inclusion, the values of equity and inclusion.
But I really believe that is because you embrace humanity. You embrace their humanity. You are not you create a safe environment for people to ask questions to you from a place of them wanting to understand so they can do better without making them feel stupid or shameful for asking the question, which I think is a really powerful gift that you have.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Because there are a lot of people that are in the DEI space that are not approachable in terms of like, it's almost like taboo to ask certain questions. And I think that, in the work that you do, you allow people to embrace their humanity regardless of identity. It doesn't matter what the identity is. Everybody is entitled to that. And you demonstrate that in your work.
So there's Bobby Harrow has done this work, the cycle of socialization and cycle of liberation. And one of the things, the cycle of socialization is like, how is it that we continue to uphold oppressive and white supremacist cultures? And so she talks about like how we're socialized, and the fear really is at the heart of why we act the way we act. And so her theory is when you move out of the cycle of socialization and you move into the cycle of liberation, you actually begin to understand that things aren't the way you were socialized is not quite right. Like there's a disruption, there's some type of inequity, but you don't necessarily know what to do with it. When you turn out into the cycle of liberation, the first thing you have to do is understand yourself. Like you can't start like managing, being like a social justice advocate. You can't build a coalition. You can't change a culture. You can't support other people until you understand, why do I believe what I believe, and have the self-compassion to say, oh, I may not have known, but I can do something different. Because until you can recognize your own humanity and have compassion for the things that you didn't know or didn't do right, you actually cannot have compassion for other people. Because typically what we do when we don't have compassion for things that we do wrong, we judge other people for doing those things as well.
Right. And your beliefs change when you learn different things.
Right.
It's one of these things.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but when you understand why you believe a thing,
right,
then you can choose whether you want to continue to believe it or do you want to believe something else.
Right.
But that's self-examination. And so I want to build a relationship with the people that I'm coaching so that they can do that self-examine. So that it has to be a safe place and to be super vulnerable about why they believe what they believe in the first place.
So she's misbehaving while we're talking because I have 2 beds here and the other 2 dogs are in the other 2 beds sleeping. And so she's offended because she can't get into the beds because they're in the beds.
She shall wake them up.
Wake them up. Yes, that's right. She's growling at them and they're both looking at her like, who do you think you are? All right. So I have one last question.
Okay.
You and I have worked together for a while. And when I listen to you speak and I listen to how in touch you are with yourself and how, brilliant I think you are about so many things in the world, I look at you sometimes and I think you don't even need a coach. So talk to me about why you continue to invest in coaching and support and have done so. I think you've pretty much done it since you started your business.
I also have a trainer at the gym because I would still be lifting 20-pound weights if it wasn't for him.
I'd be lifting no weights.
I saw him the other day and I did these pull downs and it was 115 pounds. And I looked at him and I was like, never. It wouldn't even occur to me. 100, like nothing in 100. It wouldn't even be in my mind that I would look at weights and touch them and pull them down and it was over 100. Like it wouldn't even be part of my consciousness. And he laughed. He's like, well, you work really hard. Of course, I'm going to push you. That is why I love coaching. I actually love to learn. I love to grow. I love to expand. And I need other people that are in partnership with me to help me to break my assumptions. Why do I believe that's not true? And often people see things in me that I don't see or think that is all possible. And Lisa, I was thinking about this before I say, so why, Lisa? So why am I, but you know what it is, Lisa? Two things. You're super honest. You're very interested in me as a human and my work and the impact it has. So I feel that you're passionate about my work, as passionate about my work as I am. And we don't agree. Like, I don't necessarily always agree with your point of view, but it makes me stop and ask, why don't I agree? And should I agree or should I not agree? And so you make me examine my thinking and my assumptions always. And I know that when you're doing it, you're pushing me because you see more. You see me pulling down 115 pounds, right?
Right. But I think that's a really valuable point, because I think a lot of people think that they have to agree with everything that a coach or an advisor tells them. And you don't.
I don't.
You don't have to act on things that a coach or advisor tells you, nor should you if it doesn't feel in alignment with your values, your purpose.
Right. And it's different than having a coach who's not aligned with you and your values, and a coach who's making you think critically.
Yes.
I love her. I love her.
I love her too. And she's hilarious. She's just being such a troublemaker. She's like, I don't care that you're on a podcast, Mom.
She's like, I am being my true self.
Yes, I am. And you're going to like it.
But yeah, I think it's really important. Like, I think really critically when, like, you'll say, well, you should do this, or you maybe consider this, or have you thought about this? And then the things that I agree about, I don't necessarily think critically, but the things that I disagree, I want to know, why am I disagreeing with that?
Right. I love that though, because you want to know why you're bumping up against something. You actually are practicing your talk, which is, why do I believe what I believe? And is it right for me to believe this way? And you're trying to actually do the self-reflection of, why am I thinking or responding or reacting or feeling this way? And is it real, or is it a story I'm telling myself?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And it might be okay for now, and something that I think about, oh, but you know what? I will be ready to do that later.
Right.
So it's all the things. I could never do that by myself. And I just enjoy you. I enjoy working with you.
Oh, I enjoy working with you too. I do. If you had one piece of advice to give listeners who are potentially considering hiring a coach to work with them in their business next year, what advice would you give them in terms of how they make the best selection for them? Because earlier you talked about how you had been in other coaching programs, but they were group programs, and you didn't feel like somebody was really interested in you. What I hear you saying is that some coaches are rote. They're following a prescribed methodology versus a personalized approach to what is important to the individual person. But I'm curious, from your perspective, what advice you would give somebody who's considering hiring a coach right now. What should they be thinking of?
So one thing I think is, when I first started looking for a coach, I was hoping someone would help me fix my business, or help me run my business, or tell me how to manage my business. And my business was my own spiritual journey. Like, no one's going to take all those bumps out of the road, but you want someone who can tell you the truth, who can support you, who's already been there, but also is okay if you don't take their advice. They're not saying, well, you didn't take my advice, and now, because sometimes you just have to learn on your own.
Right.
No one can take the bumps out of the road for you, but they can help you understand what the bumps are, help you to avoid the bump again. Don't do these things. So you want someone who's experienced. I think for me, and this is what I've been listening to the other podcasts, and I want to reiterate, you want a coach who's also always learning.
Mm-hmm.
So if they have the humility to tell you that they're still learning, and that they're investing in their own coaching, and this thing happened and I made a mistake, then you know that they're going to see your humanity and be the kind of coach that will help you along on the journey with some compassion and wisdom.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Because sometimes when you go over those bumps, you need somebody to pick you up.
Oh my God.
You need
Oh,
somebody-
and tell you know what? I went over that bump and I'm standing.
Yeah, you're okay. You can do this again. I know the 115 pounds didn't come down. You let go of the bar and it made a big noise. I got you. You can do this.
You can do it. You can do it. Exactly.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Jennifer, so much. As always, I could talk to you all day long. I so enjoy our conversations. And for those of you listening, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I will have Jennifer's website, Leverage to Lead, in the show notes so that you can read more about her and her work. And I really appreciate you listening to another episode of She Talks Business. Bye for now.